Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, let me share my screen. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about, the risks associated with, the cybersecurity risks, the increased risks of working from home, and what it's like to work in this increasingly scary environment. I have with me today, I have Jeff Brenner. Jeff Brenner is one of the partners here at Black Cipher. He is a digital forensic investigator. Jeff, introduce yourself, and then Kyle, I'll have you introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Larry said, I'm a digital forensics specialist. I'm a recovering attorney to start, a licensed private detective in New Jersey, and now conducting and managing the investigations when we have breaches at the office. Not at our office. We have breaches for our clients that we're handling throughout the country.
My area of expertise, I have a background in systems interoperability. I've been working in IT for a very long time. I have a very deep understanding of how systems talk to each other, of how about data flows through systems, as well as I have a background in governance and project management. Kai Feister, who is our chief security architect. Take a second to introduce yourself, please. You're muted. Kai, you're muted.
Yep. Sorry about that. Thanks for the intro, Larry. So I'm the chief security architect at Black Cipher. I run the technical security division. My specialty is offensive security. So some of you may have heard the term ethical hacker. That's essentially what I do. We get engaged by clients to test their security from the attacker's perspective. So that's it for me.
Okay. Can you all see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah, that's
okay.
all.
Great. So the topic today, the blurred lines of the pandemic and risky business practices. And we're going to start off. Let's see how I can get my screen to move. We're going to start off with we're going to do a small demonstration. So often, we are told over time and time again to be so careful about the emails that we receive. Email as one of the is one of the top areas in which a hacker is going to try to gain access into your environment, to your corporate environment. So we're going to start off by showing you, okay, if you did receive one of these emails and clicked on it, what might it look like? So I'm going to turn this over to Kai. Kai's going to take us through this through a hacking demonstration, and then we're happy to discuss what we talked about and what we see, as we're going through this. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll address them as quickly as we can. Kai?
Okay. So just to set the stage here, the screen on the left is the attacker's computer, and the screen on the right is a simulated victim. We created this environment, this fake, law firm called Blackstone Law Group. And what you see on the right is an email, an attack email from a simulated attacker pretending to be from that firm's IT group. Okay, so you're going to see some things in here that you may not understand, some text going across the screen. Don't pay attention to that. Listen to what I'm saying for each particular point. And you're also going to get a copy of this so you can review it later. So I'm going to start off. Okay, so what you see here is on the left is the attacker waiting for an inbound covert connection to the victim. So let me just go back here. I missed one thing. Okay. This email is a social engineering email. It's trying to trick the user into clicking on this link saying that there's an update for software, in use in the environment. So the victim clicks on it and there's a pop-up. Person clicks again And this is all it takes. The text that you just saw on the left shows that the attacker just broke into the computer. The victim doesn't see anything at all.
Now,
So,
Kai has slowed this down so he can take you through this line by line, but keep in mind, this is all happening typically at machine speed.
correct. So what's happening on the left is a couple additional what are called post-exploitation activities, right? So the attacker can, escalate their privileges to system, which in a sense allows them to act like God on the computer. They can do anything. They're completely all powerful. So that just completed. Okay. All right. So give me a second here. So as you can see here, there's this command that says get system. All right. It says got system via technique 1. So now the attacker has complete control over this computer. Now you see there's a text on the bottom here that says load Mimikatz. Some of you may or may not have heard of this, but Mimikatz is this tool that allows an attacker to extract credentials out of memory on a computer. Okay, so what you're going to see here is that get dumped. So right here you see a user field and a password field. Here you have the user John Q public, and here is his password, secret password. So now the attacker actually has that user's username and password. The next thing the attacker is doing here is listing all of the processes that are running on the computer, because what he wants to do is log the user's keystrokes, right? So this is why, if you've ever heard of multi-factor authentication, why it is so important, because if an attacker manages to capture your keystrokes, they can capture your credentials. So if you were logging into your bank, you were doing anything from this computer, the attacker would then have those credentials. So as you can see here, the key scan, right, was started. It says key scan started successfully. Now I'm going to have the victim go and type an email. So now we're going to dump those keystrokes. And as you can see right there on the bottom, everything that the user typed was captured. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to show a sample of a remote screenshot. So now you have anything that someone might be looking at that is confidential or sensitive, the attacker can capture a screenshot of that. So as you see, the screenshot command was executed, the file was saved to the attacker's computer. He opens it up and there's a complete duplicate of what they were looking at. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually exfiltrate data. We're going to steal information from the computer. So you see that medical record that's sitting on the desktop, we're going to just download it right now. So as you can see, we just exfiltrated that. Now, you've got the antivirus that says, hey, you're completely secure. Meanwhile, all of the worst types of things happen in the background, completely undetected by the antivirus and undetected by the user. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
So at this point, Kai showed what happens, what could happen if you do click on an email. Not only was an attacker able to steal credentials, but they were able to steal data directly off of that machine. So let's see if we have any questions at this point.
Just have one.
Go ahead, Jeff.
The question is just to clarify, if the person would have just opened the email but not clicked on anything inside the email, would the attacker have been able to get their information?
No. So this brings up an important point, right? The first thing is that a lot of these, there's two types of attacks. There's interactive and non-interactive. If anyone has heard about the recent attack on Microsoft Exchange, this is an example of an attack that does not require user interaction, right? Now, phishing emails require user interaction. This is why having having technology in place to detect malicious emails before they actually reach the user's inbox, having additional security measures such as EDR solutions, which is endpoint detection and response, that can pick that stuff up. You want to have as many fail safes as possible. But again, if the user does not interact, they are safe.
In that particular situation, for that particular type of attack.
So there's a couple questions. I'll just read them. How does it bypass antivirus? So, if you think about things, you want to disguise, right? That's another way of bypassing antivirus. And the other thing is just moving in areas of a system that antivirus is not looking at, right? So if you have motion detectors, like some homes, because motion sensors and window sensors cost money, they only put the sensors on the back and the sides of the house, and they don't put it on the front, right? So malware authors will write malware code to say, look at the front window and not go to the sides and the back. That's one way of bypassing antivirus. Second thing, someone asked, do these attacks scrape passwords through Chrome and Internet Explorer? Absolutely, it is certainly possible. This is why, when you store passwords in a browser, it's a very bad idea because they could potentially be stolen there. The other thing that a lot of people do not know, and we do these on penetration tests, is if we get a user's credentials, if a user stores their passwords in Chrome, you can go to Chrome and say, show me my passwords in clear. And it says, well, give me your computer username and password. And when we do that, all of a sudden, everything that they have saved, their Amex account, all of that, it's all showing in clear text, right? Yes, we do offer training. I love how you showed the hackers and the user side of my company.
Okay, so now let me. I'm gonna share. Let's go a little bit through. We're going to talk about, so Kai, can you talk a little bit about what the, now we see what a hacker does and the one way in which they're, they're breaking into an organization. Can you talk about a little bit the three different areas that a hacker or a criminal is trying to, what their objectives are?
Yeah. So now, I mean, it has changed, right? The primary path and the primary process now is they break in and they exfiltrate data as soon as possible, right? So then they ransom it. And the data that they steal first, right? They do this because one of the things that has been happening to the attackers is when they try to ransom an organization and that that company has backups, well, the attack fails, right? They walk away with nothing, right? So to make money out of all of their efforts, now what they're doing is they're saying, look, we stole all your data. You don't want to pay us the ransom. We're going to leak this into the public domain. Right? We're going to call your customers and we're going to tell them that we have your information. So
I want to draw attention to the data and financial theft and the command and control and the methods in which the criminals utilize to try to complete their objectives. And I notice on both of these, right, they both have brute force and guessing of passwords. So Kai, remind us how to defend, the best way to defend an organization against these two obvious, or these two methods of breaking in.
Sure thing. So multi-factor authentication is certainly absolutely crucial. So I'm going to just really quickly go over the three types of authentication. There is single factor, which everyone knows, which is a password, right? So it's something you know. Second factor is something you have, such as your phone or, a hardware token that generates a 6-digit PIN every 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And then the third is something you are, so a fingerprint or a retinal scan. So for most organizations, what's feasible is two-factor authentication. The other thing is not reusing passwords, right? So, take LinkedIn, for example, that was hacked back in 2016, I believe, and all of the usernames and passwords were dumped in clear text. So now there are people that have their password out on the dark web. Well, what attackers do is something called credential stuffing. So when you have your password, right, say for LinkedIn or any other, site that you may have signed up for that got compromised, they take that username and password and go to Wells Fargo and try to log in, or they go to QuickBooks or ADP and they try to log in. Now, sometimes they're successful. We have actually seen these where they've taken credentials from one dump and tried them somewhere else. Well, this wouldn't happen if you only use that password for that particular account. It's like having a master key that the attacker now has and then tries all the different locks and gets in.
Right. So companies, we've got these small companies, or some companies say, well, I'm so small. How are they ever? No one's going to know about me. No one's going to find out about me. So do the small companies, do they need to worry? I mean, they have such a small footprint or exposure. How, these are the different types of attacks. Why does a small company need to worry?
So let's just quickly break that down. Targeted attacks. Okay. This is going to be China going after, a company that has a particular, patent or trademark, or is doing some kind of research on something that the Chinese want, right? It's a known fact that that's what they do, right? They break into companies and they steal information. So that's an example of a targeted attack. Opportunistic attacks are different, right? It's like, hey, it's like someone that is desperate for money, is walking down the street and happens to see a laptop sitting in an unlocked car, right? They just happened to be there. They wanted the computer and they took it. So one of the things that small businesses need to understand is, when they say, oh, who's going to come after me? The fact of the matter is, the way this works is when they compromise one person's email account, what they do is they then steal the contact list, right? And then they start phishing those companies and it grows exponentially. The other thing is that attackers have these bots, kind of like Google, that crawl websites and they look for the @ symbol and they scrape email addresses off of your site, right? And then that goes into a list, and then they send out, spam emails that have malicious payloads or malicious links, like what we showed. And that's how the attacks occur as well. It's not that they, went after you in particular.
What's interesting, I want you to talk a little bit about, we're not going to get into details about this recent Exchange attack, but you mentioned last week to us, or 2 weeks ago, that the internet was being sprayed looking for instances of the systems that were susceptible to the attack. What do you mean by sprayed?
So it's automation, right? So an attacker can take individual steps, to take. Here's a good example. Let's say that a burglar knows that there is a particular type of home style that is vulnerable to break in, right? And nowadays we have these houses that are, kind of cookie cutter, right? They're not unique. They follow a certain pattern. Well, all the burglar would have to do is then look up wherever this builder made those homes. And he's automatically going to know that those types of homes are vulnerable to a particular break-in technique. Same thing with the internet. The difference is that the internet is not bound, in a sense, by the laws of physics. So if you can script something out, you can then, in a sense, automate an attack and automate vulnerability identification for systems that are sitting on the internet. And it takes maybe a few hours to identify vulnerable systems.
So you're saying that there's an attacker can basically search the entire internet in a matter of hours looking for a match, a system that matches,
Correct.
Or systems that match?
Sometimes it's minutes.
Wow.
You can scan, there's tools, Mass Scan is an example, that you can scan the entire internet within 8 minutes.
So I think next I want to talk a little bit as we're wrapping down on time. I'd like to go through some of these examples that we have on the screen of some issues that we've come across over the past year or so. Jeff is could you pick one or two of these and talk a little bit about what the attack was, and then for example the accounting firm, what the attack was, and what kind of forensics you had to do to your team did to identify what happened, how it happened, and maybe what was taken.
Sure. So an accounting firm, this was last year, and they were doing what they had always been doing, working remotely and using personal computers at home to log into the company server, and then accessing the whether it be Peachtree, QuickBooks, whatever accounting software they were using, and then going to submit those tax returns through to through their accounting software to the IRS and the local local states departments of Treasury. And during the course of one night, a hacker accessed the home computer that was used by the entire family of one of the support staff, one of the accountants who was working from home. And the attacker was able to keystroke log everything that the worker was doing, and was able to use that information to log into the tax preparation software and actually file about a dozen to 18 tax returns that belong to the firm's clients. And the next morning, when the accountant, principal of the firm came in, he saw that they had successfully filed a number of tax returns, which he knew were not anywhere near ready to be filed. And then began the questioning of the software, the tax accounting software, asking them if they had a hack. Why would they have submitted these tax returns? He was going to blame the software company for releasing these returns, even though they were all in draft. And ultimately, they learned it wasn't a software company, but it was somebody from their firm filing the returns and hitting submit. That's when we got involved to do the forensic investigation. We had to image the computers that were involved, and we found the malware on the home computer. And we found all the logins, the IP addresses, and we were able to establish that it was, in fact, one of his employees working from home using a home computer that allowed the attack to occur, and then the capture of all those keystrokes. He ultimately had to notify every one of his clients of the event. Took the high road. His clients were actually very respectful of it. They were getting refunds. Unfortunately, because the tax returns had been filed and they were filed fraudulently, there were $9,000 tax refunds being requested, $4,000 refunds being requested. The government paid those to the hacker. It was sent to wire, using the wire instructions given. They deposited the money in the hacker's accounts, and then the actual customers had to wait and work their way through the appeal process to say it wasn't them and the real tax return is coming. But the accountant indicated to us that everything was worked out very well from a very bad situation. His clients respected him in the way he handled it. His reputation actually, we think it improved because he handled it so well. In the end, we believe that nobody actually got harmed other than the United States government. We, as taxpayers, paid the hackers, but it was a matter of 3 or 4 months dealing with the state police, dealing with the IRS, dealing with the firm itself, looking through investigating the various computers, trying to string together all the pearls onto the necklace to see how this actually happened. And unfortunately, he did not have a cyber insurance policy. So kudos to those who have purchased it in the ensuing year. The real risk now is this year, did any of these hackers continue to try to use the credentials that they obtained last year to file tax returns on behalf of the same people or other people from that accounting firm? And unfortunately, we have several other accounting firms this year who are going through the same situation.
So Jeff, I have a question from the audience. If they had been using QuickBooks cloud version, right? If it were a cloud version versus premise version, would it have protected the the firm from
In this case, there was no two-factor authentication used. So if it had been QuickBooks on the cloud and they didn't have 2FA set up, they would have, through the keystroke logger, in this case, they would have captured those, the password, but they wouldn't have captured the token, because the next time they tried logging in with the username and password, they would have, the guy at the house would have gotten an alert on his phone. Here's your token to log into QuickBooks, and I'm not in QuickBooks, so he would know that it's a scam and the hacker couldn't get in.
So the important point to note here, it's not necessarily where the data was hosted. Necessarily, it was the end user that was compromised. It was the home computer that was compromised that led to the compromise of the accounting software. So that is a key point. And when we're talking about work from home, when we talk about work from home and the issues about work from home, the mixed use of personal computers, the rise in email, it is the home computers, or those computers that are home, that is what's increasing the risk of an attack. I want to go quickly then. I think we're keeping an eye on time here. Let's talk about some quick tips. Kai, could you take us through these quick tips, and then we'll open up the for any questions. Does that work okay with the MEA folks? With Kevin, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. Keep going.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So this is super, super important. Be suspicious. Be absolutely suspicious of everything that arrives in your inbox, right? Malware is attackers. I'm going to give you all of the points where they attack. The first is a link, right? That link is either going to lead to an attack, like a drive-by download, or it's going to lead to a phishing page asking you to put in your credentials. If you're not expecting it, if you think it's potentially bad, forward it to IT, forward it to security, trust your gut. The next thing is attachments. There can be malware. We don't have the time to show all of this. You can embed malware inside of a Word document. You can embed it inside of an Excel spreadsheet. You open that, you'll not see anything happen, and we've just broken it.
And this is an example of that, and we get this often with HR folks, is accepting resumes, blind resumes from applicants.
Never accept anything in Word format. Everything should always be in PDF, right?
One thing you can do is set up a dedicated, forward that email to a dedicated computer that is not connected to the internet or not connected to your network other than the email, but you'll have to set up a policy and procedure for the HR department to open up those types of resumes, or email back requesting the resume to be sent back in PDF or faxed over.
Or the best solution is to use some sort of a resume management system.
Correct.
Where, like Indeed or LinkedIn, where the resumes go to them and you don't actually get the original resume, you get to look at a safe copy of the resume. So nothing is allowed inside your infrastructure. Back to you, Kai.
The next thing is they'll request information, right? Believe it or not, there's been cases where the attacker says, hey, we're doing an audit, spoofs an email from, or creates a fake domain that looks like your accounting firm and says, hey, we're doing an audit. We need a copy of your W-2s. People send it out, right? So any type of request for confidential information should always go through multiple people to get approved. Second thing, again, can't stress it enough. Enable 2FA on every account that you can possibly have, especially if it can cause damage if someone gets into it, such as your online banking. There was just a recent case with an orthodontic firm where the attacker was actually going back and forth. The attacker had compromised the person's email account and then went to go change the password on their bank account. Right. And the person was getting emails, and then the attacker tried to change the password to the bank account so they couldn't get in. and then the person would reset it, right? And then reset email would go back to their email. And then it was a race between the attacker and the victim trying to change the password. It was pretty crazy. So 2FA on everything is absolutely essential. This is more of an IT and security thing, but logging on everything. When there are attacks and we get called in, people are like, tell us what happened. We go and look for log sources and there aren't any, or they've been set to overwrite themselves. And the fact is that when that happens, you can't say what happened. You have to assume the worst.
Right. That's part of the evidence. That's part of the evidence that the forensic team needs to determine what happened, how it happened, what may have been taken.
Yep. This again is an IT thing, but the administrator account. It is much easier to do bad things when the users are running the administrator account. Just think about it. It's running in the context of an administrator. It has the malware and the attacker has the same privileges as that account. So if you open malware or open a malicious document and malware runs and an attacker gets on your computer or malware runs, if it's running in the standard account, it makes it much more difficult and also more likely for the attacker to get caught. Updates, keep computer systems and third-party software up to date. It's absolutely essential. I know it's very difficult. Again, this goes to an internal, process with IT and all of that, but I can't tell you that, we see so many cases where people get compromised and where we, during penetration tests, are able to get into systems very easily because those systems have not been updated. Last point is protecting and monitoring work from home devices is absolutely essential. You have to have visibility on the computers. Now think about how things used to be. You went into an office, right? And you were in that office, and that office was this kind of little cordoned off box from the internet, right? Well, that doesn't exist anymore. There is no perimeter. The computers are everywhere, right? So there's no, in a sense, firewall that's catching all of these logs. You actually need very, very high quality monitoring on the computers themselves. And that's using technology called EDR, which is endpoint detection and response. So I'm not going to keep talking. We'll move on.
Okay, so now we have a couple of questions. Let me just take these couple of questions. Do you offer security training for companies and their employees? Absolutely, multiple types of security. Security awareness training is one of the top things to do to help prepare your organization. It's like turning all of your employees, all of your staff into security monitoring professionals, making sure that they know what to look for and how to react. And security awareness training can occur both at the user level as well as at the IT level, and it is often best followed up with some sort of testing, like a managed phishing campaign. Very important that an organization has a formalized security awareness training program.
So Larry, let me stop you there. So I've seen a couple people ask about training. If you want to, anybody that's interested in training, please just say yes in the chat. And if we have enough there, we'll work with Larry and the team to see if we can kind of set up something through MEA to offer that training with these guys. So just, so oftentimes that's, good first level be kind of a deeper awareness of what we're doing here, and then you kind of get into the company. So I see people popping in. So Larry,
great, great. The next question is this one is for Kai. Does antivirus software catch malware in attachments?
Yes. So this, am I on mute?
No, you're good.
Okay. So this is a difficult question, and I'm going to be brutally honest here. Malware, is getting very, very sophisticated, and the malware authors are getting very sophisticated. There are certain solutions out there that are better than others. I can tell you, though, that you do not want to rely on only antivirus. This is why I stress the word EDR. If you
Let me
just
pause you for 1 second, Kai, because I'm going to read you the next question, because where you're going is going to answer this next question as well. Some hacks go into stealth mode for a period of time, looking for an opportunity to maximize their impact, maybe months later. Is there a way of identifying these before execution?
Well, there has to be initial execution, right? So let me just explain this to you. You have an attacker sitting geographically, say in Russia, and you have a business in New York. Well, attacks don't just miraculously happen. The attacker has to connect digitally to the target in some way. So let's say how it almost always starts with an email with an attachment or a hyperlink or something like that, but it's mostly an attachment. The person opens up the attachment. Malware is dropped, and this is what's called a dropper. I want you to think of like a conduit, that water travels through a pipe or electricity travels through a wire. It's the exact same thing. But what happens is that the dropper goes to sleep. It has, a timer, right? That it checks in for instructions every 60 days or 90 days. In this case, with SolarWinds, which you all heard about, when that malware was initially executed, it landed on the system and then went to sleep for, I think, 10 days before it woke up, right? So this is exactly what Michael is talking about. Now, this is why EDR solutions are so important, because they are like a surveillance camera that is monitoring all of the inbound and outbound network connections, the changes to files and registry modifications and all of that. Because in the event something doesn't get detected, you still have that data that was recorded, and you can go back, right, when you do get a detection and query the system and then see what it actually did. The fact of the matter is, none of these technologies are 100% effective 100% of the time. You're going to have some gaps, and that's why defense in depth is so important.
Guys, we're gonna have to cut you off here. I hate to do this because
Yep.
you're obviously we're all very interested in this, but it sounds like we'll be seeing you all again in some security awareness type of program. So be on the lookout for that.